Hello and welcome to the GuideK12 Leadership Series of events. It's now 1 o'clock Central Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julie Fitzgerald. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for GuideK12. And we do have a full house today, which is great. Again, thank you for coming. Please mute your phones so we have the highest audio quality for everyone. We will take questions at the end. Feel free to write your questions in to me, the moderator, in the chat room window that you'll see on the screen, and we'll do our best to address them. And we can also send out the answers at the end, and we will be posting a recording of this webinar to our website by midweek. So just a few things to get us started. I wanted to just say a few comments about GuideK12. We're pleased to sponsor this event. GuideK12 is web-based analytic software. It makes it easy to visualize student data on a map and run what-if scenarios. It's really designed for administrators. It makes it easy to interact with data, allows you to make decisions faster, easier, and more informed. Our customers love the ease of use and the customization to be able to do boundary planning, filter and query student data, visualizing the students on a map, for everything from resource planning to open enrollment tracking, referendum planning, and a whole lot more. We are proud to work with districts across the country, from Miami-Dade at 350,000 students to some as small as 2,500 students or less. Today, I am very pleased to introduce to you a district that we've had the pleasure to work with for the last couple of years, Sunnyside Unified School District in Tucson, Arizona. As a district, they've been recognized for their technology and their innovation. As you all know, this doesn't just happen by coincidence. It's really about having the right people empowered with the vision to make things happen. When Sunnyside's most recent changes were implemented, I was so impressed with the leadership, the thought, the thoroughness that went into tracking these big challenges. I couldn't wait to have them share their story. So your presenters today are Javier Baca, the Chief Information Officer from Sunnyside Unified, as well as Pam Benton, Executive Director of Digital Learning. Thank you both for being here and sharing your district stories with us and your approach to your data, your process, and your driving change. So now I'm going to turn over the screen and let the Sunnyside team take it away.
Thank you, Julie, and good morning. And I hope that, well, first off, I hope you can see my screen. Can everyone see my screen, the Sunnyside Digital Conversion slide?
I can over here.
Okay, so if you can see it, we should be fine. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Javier Baca, as Julie mentioned. I'm Chief Information Officer here at Sunnyside, and my colleague, I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at, I suppose. My name is Pam Benton, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to think out loud, share our something we walk away and learn from it as well. So thank you.
So we have a presentation. It's many slides. Not all of them are going to take a lot of time to go through, but it does share a little bit of Sunnyside's story and how we've arrived at a culture of change. As Julie mentioned, what this is about is minimizing stress within a system that's undergoing a lot of change, and we feel that we've learned along the way, as part of our story, some of those strategies to minimize that stress and to accomplish significant change. So the first section will be my piece, and I'm just going to give Sunnyside's story briefly, but you can understand, it's a context, it's background context for the larger change that we've been undergoing over the last couple of years, and the systems that we've adopted to help manage that change, and GuideK12 certainly being one of those effective systems. We're a district with demographics that have many challenges, high poverty in our school system, moderately sized district of 17,000, approximately 18,000 students.
Students are on so they use that to do some of this stuff.
If you could mute your phone on that end, just so I didn't want to be distracting. Hopefully you can mute there. Sorry about that. So we have, you see, these are our schools, about 21 schools, about 2,200 total staff, including both certified and support staff, high English language learner population. So these are challenges that are typical of Arizona school systems for sure, and I'm sure many of the districts online, Dallas and et cetera online, so you may have similar experience. One of the things that we're proud of is that we've taken on a very bold and aggressive conversion of, to a digital learning environment within our district, really going away from traditional learning environments and the textbooks models. And so part of that conversion has part of the work that we've done in order to accomplish that has been partnering with groups like Project Red and Digital Promise. We've been nominated to be a member of the League of Innovative Schools by the work that we've accomplished over the last 5 and 6 years. This is a slide that could be, I could speak to this for probably 3 to 4 hours and not do it justice, but it does try to capture what I feel is a critical prerequisite to it captures very big rocks, big items that we need to make sure that are well established for the type of change that we're trying to accomplish in Sunnyside, and that change being, how do we create learning environments that provide students learning opportunities that didn't exist before, and the digital resources being a tool to that. They're not the silver bullet, they're not the answer, but they are a significant resource that we feel is appropriate given some of the other challenges that school systems face now. So you can see the scale up that we've accomplished since 2010, both on our internet bandwidth from 50 megs in 2010 all the way up to 2 gigabits that we're currently working at now, and that's significant growth over the short time period. And it very much mirrors the number of computing devices that are in our students' hands. Every student grades 4 through 12 now carry around a laptop, a mobile computing device. The majority of them are Chromebooks. Some of them are traditional Windows 7 laptops, but we are slowly phasing those Windows devices out and to be replaced entirely with the Chromebooks for all grade levels. The other bullet points on the left, there's just very big items that we had to address and we had to learn along the way. And while I can't dive into these, I just wanted to use this slide to capture what we've done in 5 years change in support of digital learning. These were prerequisites that we really had to spend a lot of time and put a lot of energy and strategic thought into, and these capture some of the big ticket items that need to be accomplished. Not only is it necessary for us to have a robust infrastructure, we've rethought our existing support systems of staff and personnel, and how we've radically changed how we provide services from the IT department. And I oversee the IT operations, and how that occurred traditionally was not feasible and not adequate to meet the needs of a district with the amount of resources, digital resources being used. We decentralized our technicians. We've taken existing clerical type positions and repurposed them and redefined what they do. What used to be a library clerk is now what we call a media center technician, and those media centers, our libraries, serve as a hub for a lot of the digital learning support system. When repair needs to occur, it's through that library that serves as a hub. We've also created a coaching model that has evolved over time significantly, but it also has provided the type of instructional support system. So, you look at it from both angles, the technical support systems and infrastructure versus the instructional support systems and infrastructure. And we want to make sure that those are well-defined support systems in the sense that there's not a lot of overlap. What we don't want to have is our instructional coaches end up doing the technical support work. That shouldn't be a thought. That shouldn't be a burden on instructional support staff, on coaches. There should be adequate technical support capacity, so that doesn't become a burden on the instructional coaches. So we were very purposeful in creating designing a structure that accommodated that model. This does kind of talk about how they've evolved over time. District instructional coaches, and they've become these digital learning coordinators, and we now have them specialized, focus on One specializes on just digital content, just all the resources of the curriculum that we adopt. Another one focuses just on PD. Another one focuses on the logistic support systems and the procedures and manuals and guides that students and have to follow. We've created a different model about how we provide technician support. Our traditional reading and math coaches have evolved into instructional technology coaches, so it's not a replacement, but it's an enhancement of their work. As I mentioned, the library clerks evolved into media center technicians, and librarians have taken an active role in helping the transition that we expect as well. Quickly, this is our scope of devices that occurred last year. Next year it's a slightly different model, but you can see how we have a variety of different types of devices we support. And it's not just a 4 through 12 1-to-1 ratio. Third grade, it's 2-to-1. From kinder through second grade, we have a program that uses a lot of iPads. We have approximately 700 iPads deployed and it's roughly a 2-to-1 ratio for kindergarten and first grade students. So you can see the scope and the depth to which we support devices. But equally important are the content, the learning resources that have evolved over time. And again, this slide is meant to help describe the growth and the change that has occurred in Sunnyside over the last 5 to 6 years, going from 2010, where all teachers were given a laptop. This is an unprecedented event, Sunnyside at least. We weren't a technology-rich district. We had great systems, but year zero we decided we're going to make sure teachers have a quality system that they're going to start using as a teaching tool. Year one, grade 5 only, and then year 2 we just expanded by 1 more grade level. But you can see how year 3 we jumped both significantly and added 4 additional grade levels, and so on and so on. And here we are last year with the year we just completed. We call our year 5 of our digital conversion is grades 4 through 12, with every student having devices, as well as third grade is a 2-to-1 ratio. But equally important is that right column is how we've evolved in terms of the resources that we provide. Because as I mentioned before, what's more important, the learning environment that's being fostered through these resources, not so much that a student has a laptop in front of them. You can see how it's evolved over time from our year 1, where we just had more of an exploratory, phase of let's let those people who are inclined to use resources as such find quality resources, and then let's slowly start to gather those resources and identify the good versus the bad, and make sure that we start to build system support around those resources that we feel are high quality. A good example of that is in that exploratory phase, a lot of different learning management systems were tested and tried, but we quickly came to realize that if we were going to accomplish this significant change, and this goes to the change management change, we needed to provide at least a few fundamental consistent components. One of those being the learning management system. We couldn't allow a free. This classroom uses Edmodo, another classroom Schoology, another classroom uses Moodle. So we decided we're going to go strictly to a single LMS by that third year, and then we continued our adoption of Google Apps for Education, and now we consolidated those 2 of the fundamental components that we adopted. From that, we could build upon quality digital, and we started to become very selective, and sometimes we use the term snobbish in terms of what we chose as resources as a curriculum. And we'll speak to a few of them. You'll see that in the slide, and Pam is my counterpart, who really is the instructional side of the digital learning. But we've identified quality resources like Discovery Ed, Agile Mind, Springboard. Those are 3 resources that through the course of these 5 to 6 years, we've really been able to identify these are quality systems that is for a learning environment that we're trying to create. And to represent the change, you can see how we've undergone a lot of growth, but last year we now reached this maintenance mode where we're really keeping what we have, focusing on supporting it and maintaining it to the best, that maximal optimal usage by students and teachers, and that's where we're at. And now what we're excited about is that very bottom line, coding and computational thinking curriculum. It puts us, now that we have these resources in place, it puts us into a position where we can start to think about new opportunities that otherwise wouldn't be there, and how can we ensure that all of our students pass through our system and they graduate with a literacy in coding and computational thinking, not to steer everyone towards a STEM program, but to even those who aren't STEM oriented get exposed to concepts that wouldn't be really available without this resources that we're trying to support. Just wanted to talk about, so now what did that allowed us to create an environment where we can set these type of goals, where students are becoming creators rather than consumers, and we have these coding and computational thinking curriculum embedded. Learners are repositioned and teachers are repositioned, and we really support this learning environment where the 4 C's are fundamental in the classrooms. Just a quick overview of what our digital content model. I mean, our classrooms we call them one-to-one classrooms designed around a model with meaningful integration and robust digital content. And this is where really Pam's expertise has really helped create what we feel is a strong model for the content selection and on top of the hardware that we're supporting across our schools. Just a quick overview of some of those, I mentioned it earlier, some of the quality content providers that we've identified through the course of 5 years. I mentioned Discovery Ed, Agile Mind, Springboard. A lot of these are really, we felt very confident in what we've selected, and we had to let go of a lot. This represents 5 years of selection versus there's a lot of other items on here that are no longer on this list because they didn't meet our needs. And that brings us to what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of really back to the core of this presentation, that is supporting change and minimizing that type of stress. This type of change is huge. We can't understate it or overstate it. The type of change that's involved it's a cultural change. It's a mind shift. It's a paradigm shift. And these are some of the big items that we use to help accomplish that. And I've spoken to many of these. But a lot of it, we think about it in a psychological way. How do we, in our PD, help teachers think about letting go of the control that they're accustomed to having inside of a classroom, and finding that comfort in being in a chaotic learning environment? Because you could describe it as a chaotic learning environment. We hope it's not chaotic in a negative sense, but we hope it's an environment where students are self motivated and they're forging their own path, their own learning path. And the teachers are facilitating that learning, and it's not so much the traditional learning model that occurred of the past. So this type of change we've tried to accomplish over the last 5 years. And so that brings us to kind of just leading change in Sunnyside, and now we're getting into how we accomplish that and what have we built. The digital conversion, I just gave you a broad overview of what we've accomplished over 5 years. That leads us to, what are one of the big other change tasks that we had on our plate, and that was a school reconfiguration. And so for the next half of this presentation, Pam's going to dive deeply into that, but you can see those big items, relating to the reconfiguration, boundary changes, grade level changes, closing schools, renovating schools. This has all occurred over the last year and a half, approximately. So how have we led this change? The cultural support systems, and by cultural support systems, I'm really referring to the culture of leadership, the collaborative environment that the curriculum instruction department, along with the IT department, have, and that's represented by the two people speaking here today, Pam and myself. We've really created. We're no longer choose to no longer work in silos. I've worked in 2 other school districts, and it's a common environment where you have this siloed IT department. Not necessarily working 100% in support of the instructional priorities. That doesn't mean they're opposing those, but it's sometimes the alignment is perfectly there. That's a leadership culture that has been fostered inside of Sunnyside, and I think Pam and I represent our philosophical styles, leadership styles, support that type of collaboration, and so that's been beneficial. And so we always highlight that when we're talking to and sharing our story to other districts, that try to break down those traditional silos. It only will help create that common vision and common message, and then that creates buy-in from the community when you start to really see that there's not this opposing environment within the system. It's not the tail wag the dog any longer. It's what should be driving priorities are the instructional needs, the teaching and learning needs, and the resources that are being supported, say through the IT department, are 100% behind those priorities. Let's move into what other data systems. Through our selective and snobbish approach of digital content, we've really set out very high standards for what type of systems we adopt and utilize. We've changed our student information system. We've completely rewritten our underlying data structure to support data, and adopted programs like GuideK12. And I have to say, GuideK12 is one of those rare systems that just simply works and gives you actionable data. I like to draw the comparison to a previous district I worked in about 10 years ago. We had a GIS small group, and when we had to look at numbers, how hypothetical scenarios of a boundary change would affect our populations in schools, that would be a several day, if not week, turnaround time before we could have actionable data. And with a system like GuideK12, that you'll see in a moment how that is real time. We can run scenarios that give us actionable data in real time, and we can make decisions. And it's been used countless times within our leadership team to help make those decisions. But that goes to the data support systems. That's cultural change within Sunnyside. How have we accomplished the change? By creating an expectation, a high standard for the type of data systems that need to be in place to support change in the way that we have. And lastly, communication and community support. What you'll see here in a moment is really the presentation that was delivered to our governing board and our community. We just removed a few slides that weren't relevant, but really the bulk of it is truly what our community saw, and it's how we build that buy-in and community support. So with that, I do want to preface one other thing is, we have, these are the challenges. This is the context in which change was underway. We just got, this last week, found out that Arizona for the last 3 years has been 50th out of 50 in education funding. Not that we're proud of it, but that's the reality that we're facing. Through that, we've had budget cuts because of multiple M&O override laws. So we've gone to the voters for maintenance and operations override tax levies, but those haven't been approved by voters. So we've had to reduce our budget every year. That's another challenge. In the midst of this, we had a superintendent turnover, and we've just completed the hire of our new superintendent. But you can imagine the uncertainty and instability that occurs inside of a district when that superintendent, we don't have a permanent superintendent in place. Teacher shortages, I'm sure all of the audience out there can understand and relate to the problems we're facing in Arizona, and I know it's on a national scale of not being able to find adequate numbers of teachers, support staff reductions, and then oppositional resource opportunities. This is a difficult one to characterize, but by that we mean we have things where we have resources like a bond tax levy that can pay for digital content and hardware, but it can't pay for teacher raises, and it can't pay to decrease class size. It can't pay to hire additional instructional aides. We can't raise teacher salaries to recruit and retain teachers. So there's a very difficult message that has to be sent, because the community sometimes doesn't understand. They see us spending money on laptops, and they also know that our teachers are the poorest paid teachers in the nation. And that's the struggle, and the resources that are the other resources that cannot be paid for through a certain type of budget item. Those resources are scarce, and the community has to understand the difference. So that's a challenge. That's a real challenge that we've had to face. But I think that as you look at the rest of our presentation, you'll see how we try to overcome that challenge through educating our community. And with this, I want to pass it to Ms. Benton to really took this case study of what did we do through this school closure process, and how did we accomplish this change in the context of these challenges? So with that, Ms. Benton,
all right.
speak.
And I saw one question pop up that I know Javier can answer more questions to later, but we do use PowerSchool as our student information system. So I saw that. I did see that question come up. So what we did is we selected one of these presentations of some of the work that ended up happening last school year, about this time, actually, starting in January. The reconfigurations that went on ended up being 2 school closures and grade level reconfigurations at 11 schools. So the case study that you're going to see is the public hearing that we did for one of the school closures. So just to kind of give you an idea of the process that we took, and also how GuideK12 was a lifesaver for me in that. One of the pieces, and how I ended up in this mix, is I've been in Sunnyside for a long time and had been a previous principal, endured many boundary changes in the district. I had a historical sense of what had happened in the past, you know, what sort of the cultural big rocks were in shifting boundaries, and just an understanding of some of the dynamics that were at play, which is how my role of executive director of digital learning ended up partially in this work. That being said, the other piece we really wanted to look at is, as we moved forward with the digital conversion, we were really looking to change the face of the district. We had a long reputation of sort of Southside, low performing, just different challenges that we were struggling in a traditional way to overcome. So capitalizing on some of the energy that had been started with our digital conversion, we really said, all right, if we're going to close schools or we have to do something different, then let's look at what else in that quick window of opportunity, even though it's a lot more heavy lifting, that we can do to really look at some things pedagogically, to look at some efficiency things. We had some antiquated boundaries where we were transporting kids around a school to get to another school. So it really became part of our commitment to innovation, even as we moved forward. We had the 2 schools that we ended up closing, one permanently and one temporarily, as we are redesigning it into a fine arts magnet, were both low-performing schools. They were older schools. They had needs of renovation. They were a bit under-enrolled. They really became a part of the budget conversation, even more so than they did the underperforming piece. But as we really looked at efficiencies, how do we become more efficient as a system as we move forward? We were really wanting to be clear and let families in the community know that this was not just a fly-by-night idea that, oh my gosh, we're going to have to close the school, therefore, you know, it's going to push this one domino and all will be well. We really tried as a team to think through what happens when we push this one domino of closing the school. Are we following that path all the way through? Are we making sure that we have tried to troubleshoot as much as we can moving forward, make these transitions as seamless as possible for staff and students and their families in particular? So in this presentation, when we communicated it out, we wanted to make sure that even though the public hearing was about a school closure, that it was really about our mission, our vision. What do we really want to do? That our commitment, even though we were in some logistical chaos places, this is what we were committed to. And so we really wanted to frame and make sure all the decisions that we made were decisions that didn't detract from this work. We wanted people to know, our families, our communities to know that these were serious serious issues that we had grappled with, that we had looked deeply at the data. The GuideK12 gave us the ability to have the confidence to make decisions about moving boundaries and students and special populations and working with transportation, so that we could confidently say the decisions we made were truly based on data and well thought through. The two schools that we closed, Los Ranchitos and Chaparral, have been open for decades in our district, and so it was not a quick and easy close, because there was a lot of history and a lot of community members who attended those schools. So we had to make sure that we really communicated it well. As we were deciding to close those schools, we also were in a place to say we need to do some middle school redesign. Los Ranchitos, one of the schools that we closed, was a K through 5 campus. Chaparral was a middle school in a 6 through 8 configuration. We've been looking at middle schools. Really, we continue to say, how do we do middle school different so it's more effective and efficient for students? One of the pieces we've been looking at a lot of the research on was 6th grade. And so it sort of seemed that window of opportunity to say, if we're shifting boundaries and we're making some space decisions and we're making some transportation and programmatic decisions, let's look at the possibility to really begin that shift in a thoughtful way to say, we want to change that model so our 6th graders stay in the elementary. This was a piece also where we needed the analytics to be able to say, yeah, we can do this, to be able to say to elementary principals, we'll help find the space. By moving this and this, we can create space. So it was, again, it was that mission and that vision for saying, this is what we believe is right, and grounded in some thought and research around what pedagogy we wanted to operate from, and then the data who helped inform us if that was a possibility. Economies of scale, we spent some time with this. We were in budget crisis at that time, really looking at operational efficiencies. I mentioned transportation. We need a lot of buses. We do not have many that are neighborhood schools. One of our schools is more rural, but for our size, we had a culture also of transporting the great majority of our students, and probably longer distance than many other school districts do. So there were some efficiencies. We needed to relook at how do you begin to make those shifts. Just an example of the way we shared this concept with our public was in empty classrooms. There were counted out 37 empty classrooms in some of our elementaries and additional space at 2 of our middle schools. And really, after these proposals went through at the time, we were looking for 7 elementaries to become K6. It ended up being 9 over the course of time, with this upcoming year being all but 1. We're making progress there. But just to give the general public an idea of what we were trying to accomplish, to be as open and as upfront as we could, that we were really trying to get the biggest bang for the buck out of having to disrupt programs, teachers, families at that point in time. So just to walk you through a little bit of the case study. One has to do with the closure of Los Ranchitos. Chaparral has a whole other plan and a whole other PowerPoint to it, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how we worked through this. So what you're seeing here is what became known as the Sierra Plan. Sierra was a middle school of ours that's located in the district. We talked a little bit about this. The dynamics, the complexity of making these moves, we wanted to really make sure that our community knew we were well aware of, and that we were trying to be very thoughtful about the work. Here in this screenshot, you see, this is a GuideK12 screenshot from a previous boundary map that we have. And I don't know if you could see my arrow, but this is Chaparral over here. This was the middle school that we were going to close at least for a year. to be renovated and reopened as a fine arts magnet school, which we're in the process of doing, but we needed to permanently relocate those boundaries because next year as we open it as a fine arts magnet school, it will not have a neighborhood boundary. So even though the closure was temporary, we had to come up with a long-term solution for the boundary. So that's just to give you a little context on that one. The other schools that we're talking about, you see Los Ranchitos here, and you see the boundary areas. In this one in particular, this is a good example of some broken boundary areas. This gray color here is Los Ranchitos boundary, which then all of a sudden you see this little blip of Los Amigos boundary in there, and then back to Los Ranchitos. So we had some inefficiencies in the system like this. Sierra Middle School is right directly above Los Ranch here, and that was the middle school which became a part of our plan. You'll also hear us mention Ocotillo, which was an early childhood center at the time, that we had board direction. They wanted to make it a primary school, so including kinder and first grade students there. So when we talk about in a slide, you're going to see something about the Sierra K-8 corridor. It's because in this block right here, or two blocks, we have both the Ocotillo, which is an early childhood center, and then the Sierra piece here. So just as a screenshot that gave us sort of those beginning places to be able to identify what are we dealing with, what do those boundaries look like, and also to show the public, to show parents inefficiencies like this piece here with that are broken boundaries with Los Ranchitos and different pieces and pockets. You can see different colors that pop in different places that it's sort of like, well, why are these here? So we wanted to take that opportunity to correct some of those. We talked about two plans with the public. The initial thought, the easy, quote unquote, thought was, let's just, if we have to close Los Ranchitos, let's just take the number of students and distribute them as equally as we can to 5 of the elementary schools that are kind of close, that have classroom space. It seemed like that was just a simple thing to do. That just seemed a logical move. As we started to look at what that meant, we realized that really the only benefit to that plan was maximizing the capacity at those elementary schools. Those disadvantages didn't allow us to move forward with this concept of saying, are we able to keep 6th grade in the elementary? The additional burden on transportation would be astronomical because Los Ranchitos students were bus students. So we would be then, splintering transportation even farther. The complexity of the transitions for families. How would we last spring be able to familiarize students and staff with where they were going? And the possibility, as the board had given us direction to open Ocotillo as a primary school, how do we keep from splitting families? And it just became very complex. So those disadvantages go to what Javier spoke of earlier, which is sort of that second order change to start to say, what do we do different here? The ability, the benefit of having a geovisual analytic tool that we could play with, that we could say, what if this, or what if that, or even once we got to that place where we, right, and we started playing with actual numbers of kids, or we sat down with transportation and said, yes, but there's no gate into that trailer park, therefore the bus would have to go around. It really gave us the ability to see what would happen when we pushed that initial domino. And we were very thoughtful and probably had, I don't even know, 100+ versions of what we were going to do because we had the access to tools like that. So this became known as the Sierra Plan. We were going to really reassign those Los Ranchitos students in grades 2 through 5 and create a 2 through 8 school at Sierra. So that Ocotillo would keep the kids, first grade students. They share authentically between the campuses. This slide sits over top, but you can start to see the benefits far outweighing the disadvantages that we have. We include Sierra's school size would be probably over capacity, and it was for the period of a year until we transitioned some other students out. Just to give you a quick look at the corridor Sierra plan, as we came to know, it sort of gives you that idea of the deliberateness that we began to really look at what does this mean. As we move to K6s or K8s or different structures for accommodating students, what does that give us? One of the pieces for kids is the transition. It really gave us the ability to support transitions for families and for students in the program, especially knowing that the students we were moving are students who struggle. The alignment of boundaries and feeder plans through our elementaries, middles, and high schools gave us an opportunity while we were in that moment of change, making change for another reason, to really sort of clean up some of the inefficiencies that we had in our system. We knew that right off the bat, some of those plans, screenshots that I showed you with the inefficiencies of the boundaries, I had to move those in order to create sixth grade at some of those other schools. So here's a screenshot of one of the ways we use GuideK12 as we looked to say, okay, we have to be able to, I need to move blank number of students out of Rivera Elementary in order for them to be able to keep their current sixth grade. So we knew we had to begin to make that move for Rivera. So we used Sierra at the time to say, okay, great majority of these students, now Sierra's right down here in this spot you don't see, in this white down here. We said, okay, efficiency-wise, they are, actually Sierra's right here, right underneath it. These are students who literally live across the street from Sierra Middle School, but we were transporting them to Apollo Middle School, which you could see off to the side. So we knew, but I needed to know how many students are we talking about. We had to deal with capacity. I needed to know how many of those students are special ed, how many of those students are self-contained, how many of those students are gifted and talented. Are there open enrollment students on there? Are there out-of-district open enrollment students? I needed to know, are there students who live in that boundary that are open enrolled to another school, so that I know to count them in or to not count them in order to really be able to say, yes, we know that Sierra can accommodate this. Yes, we know that by moving these students, Rivera can accommodate their
school capacity.
Basically the same concept, the same idea of cleaning up that area of inefficiency that we talked about before for Los Amigos. We knew we needed to move that boundary. We also needed to make some space at Los Amigos for sixth grade. So by cleaning up that area with 38 students in it, those 38 students, I knew by grade level what grades they played into at Sierra. That enabled Los Amigos to also hold their sixth grade students in their own site. This is that wider view to say, okay, how do I know? How can I say that at Sierra Middle School, a school that already has, 900 students, how am I going to make the space for 403 more students? So we identified on here, GuideK12, that there were 403 second through fifth grade incoming students that would be in that mix. Again, I could identify special populations and needs. All those, I was able to draw out lists of students so that we could check to see, what their test scores were. We were able to provide the interventions that they need. We could, from their pull list of students, to send communication out with parents to let them know when we were meeting about this, what we were talking about. So it just gave us the ability to do that, to make shifts within Sierra, to clean up some of their boundary issues in order to make this happen. This is just sort of a summary of some of the boundary work we had to do in order to make space at Sierra. Students, from Drexel Area 72 will be shifted to Apollo. Because this became very complex work, we were able to drill down and say, okay, in Area 72, I know there are this many kids, and yes, Apollo can handle that, or whatever those elementary schools of sixth grade were.
Here's a way of escape.
We do screenshot for our plan, or for our middle school plan for this current school year we just completed. The analytics gave me the ability, because parents were extremely concerned about class size. They just could not visualize what we were going to do with all these kids, not realizing that we were shifting them. So I was able to, with those analytics, pull apart the number of students I was moving in or out and show parents, these are numbers. These are numbers of actual students that we know are currently enrolled, giving them and the principals and the teachers some sense of, okay, this is going to be okay. We were able to do staffing based on this because we moved teachers with kids. We were in a budget crisis, so we needed to be as efficient as we could there as well. I'm not going to spend any time on this. It's just our rationale for 6th grade. These were our original piece that we talked about with 6th grade. But we wanted to communicate it out that what our commitments were. We really wanted our community, our teachers, our principals to know that the work that we were doing, that we were building, was thoughtful and driven by data. I'm not going to spend time on this, but we did put in play very, very clear transition plans for students to make sure that we visited them at that site. They visited the other site. We had multiple conversations with parents. Part of our ability to gain those students' names came from our work within GuideK12. These are the transition plans for teachers. This became what we were really asking the board to approve. So we were able to, because of the data that we had, we moved this through. This went with another one with Chaparral to get full board approval to move something forward that was a huge lift. Very little pushback, very little issues that we were not able to answer or address. I mean, was it the first choice of everyone in the room? It was not. But we were able to create a sense of confidence and competence that we could, in fact, make a transition that we described, even with all its additional parts, like grade, and make it as seamless as we could. So we completed this year with those transitions, not those transitions, but the transitions of moving Chaparral Middle School, which is also moving another probably 800 students to relocate them. We're now in the process of preparing to reopen Chaparral. It's been renovated to open it as a magnet for this upcoming school year. But we continue to monitor our sizes as neighborhoods grow, as they move, with information that we can pull from data that gives us a quick ability to play with sort of the what if. So that was a probably brief and confusing trip down some of the challenges that we felt that we dealt with last year, and we are happy to entertain any questions, thoughts, etc.
Thank you so much, Pam and Javier, for sharing your story. It really was a significant amount of change. What percentage of students were affected by the changes that you implemented?
Wow. What we can say is that all of 6th grade roughly was affected.
Just under 800 at Chaparral was affected. But it's hard to say because even though they weren't the schools we closed, we bumped another school. So I would say at all of our elementaries and middles, with the exception last year of 3, they experienced change of some sort. And our elementary schools sit at about 650 to 750 students, so a lot. I would say
it was between 15 to 20% students were directly impacted.
You affected a lot of the district. Yeah, these were significant changes. So
we're talking about over approximately 3,000 students that were directly affected.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions from the group? Okay, I am not seeing any questions coming in unless you're seeing some come in on your side. Again, I just want to thank everybody for attending. I can also be reached at julie@guidek12.com. That is my contact information. We will be posting this on the website. And again, thank you and have a great day. Thank you so much, Javier and Pam, for all of your thoughtful change that you've led the district through and very successfully. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to everybody who participated. One little plug, Julie. I'm sorry to.
Yep, go ahead.
If any of the audience is going to have to be at ISTE this summer, on June 29th, we're doing one of the ISTE presentations that talks a lot about what we've covered in this discussion. So if you have any more follow-up questions, look for us at our ISTE presentation on June 29th.
Perfect. Great. Thanks for mentioning that.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
week.